do we have to do as this variant of COVID is on OMICRON, COVID-19, mutations, and the new normal? This is what we'll be discussing tonight with Dr. Nelson Aluya. Be reminded that you can catch up with previous episodes of Medical Mondays with Dr. O on the YouTube channel. Dr. Tony Okesami is a HIV specialist, family practitioner, and CEO and medical director of Janasroy Medical Center. Dr. O, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Honorable Gustav. We appreciate you very, very much. And welcome to Medical Mondays with Dr. O. Yes, COVID-19 is raging, and we are now in the fourth wave. We understand that 42% of the whole world has been immunized, yet Omicron occurred, and yes, a lot of countries have been red listed. I wanted to go to Nigeria last week and could not go because of red listed lists that Nigeria was included on. So what do we need to do? What should we know about COVID-19 and this new Omicron, and how do we protect ourselves? So we're grateful for Dr. Nelson Aluya, who will help us shed light into where we are and how to better protect ourselves from this pandemic. Dr. Aluya, and there's something wrong with network today, but I see Dr. Aluya is still here. So over to you, sir.
Well, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Introduce yourself fully before you start.
So you can hear me, right?
Yes.
I hope? Yes.
Yes.
So
yes, you can.
I'm Nelson Aluya. For those who know me well, I call myself a medical advocate because I constantly advocate medically for good health, long life, and prosperity, and to fight for those of African descent to truly attain the adequate health that they deserve. Like I said, not just the absence of disease, but mental and social and economic as well as political health as well. I'm an assistant professor of medicine at the New Jersey Medical School, Rutgers University in Newark, New Jersey. Also an attending in one of the hospitals here in Newark. I'm medicine and pediatrics trained. So that means I see babies being born to 100 and something year old, medical director of a nursing home, 400 bed. I was I think the first non-Nigerian, non-African American born president of the New Jersey Medical Association. And
you're going in and out. You're going in and out.
Okay. I don't know the reception here. So I'm presently the president of the New Jersey presently the national president of the of NAPAC, the Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee. So I wear multiple hats, and getting our people informed, educated, and engaged is my mission, and so that will save lives and livelihood, and that's why we're here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, educate us on what's going on with COVID. Where are we going? What are we doing? How can we keep safe?
Well, often enough, I like to give a historic perspective of everything, so that we know and remove the myth and the misconceptions and all the things that's causing a whole lot of chaos, and that's resulting in vaccine hesitancy and retreatancy. I'll use the word in our community. Look, pandemics are not new to us. They've been with us. If it's happens in a few section of area, they call it epidemic. But then if it cuts across multiple continents and affecting some number of people, then it's called a pandemic. There's no clear definition of what a pandemic really is. But as it is right now, we uh, have a pandemic going on. The very first pandemic that was recorded in history was about 452 BC. It cut across from northern part of Egypt all through to Europe and eventually ended up in Asia and China. And we've had pandemics and epidemics all through our history. The last one in modern day history, like we know, was the Spanish flu. Again, there's still a whole lot of talk about how the Spanish flu started. Some people think it started here in Ohio. Some think it's in Philadelphia. A whole lot. But one thing that was sure was that these went across the globe and went really fast. And that's the flu that we still live with today. And it went across all the way through Europe. And for something that came out here in the US, it's now called the Spanish flu. Because when it got to Spain and it affected the king of Spain, he got sick. And then, of course, it took the name the Spanish flu. That's why it's called the Spanish flu. So with us in Nigeria, I can see a lot of Nigerian names here. So I presume a lot of you are Nigerians. So, but the flu actually got into Nigeria via Ghana. And there's a record of a gentleman who brought it in. By then, 1918, we're talking about now. And when he came in, of course, they traveled by ship and he came in from Europe. So it landed in Lagos. And by the time, I think it was sometime in early March, he landed and the whole thing spread all the way through and got to Calabar about sometime in August, September. And they're records. In fact, you'll be shocked. If you don't look at these things, you will never know these things exist. They're records. And when it got to Calabar, for those who are, from Cross River area, they call it Efiumsa. Efiumsa is actually, they couldn't call the word influenza, so they called it Efiumsa. So, and in Nigeria alone, it killed about 500,000 people. 500,000. And what's the population of Nigeria in 1918? You can imagine. Now, across the globe, here in the United States, that flu killed 2.5 million people. 2.5. Right now, it's almost 2 years and we're approaching 800,000. And we're screaming. So you can imagine what happened in 1918 with 2.5 million people. And across the globe, it's said to have killed about 50 to 75, even some people say 100 million people across the globe. So pandemics are not new to us. They've been here and we just have to get used to it. It's nature's way of I don't want to use the word purging itself. I mean, we have earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, tornadoes, all of this. Nature has a way of handling its own business. And if we get in the way of nature, it does what it does best. So, of course, then we have the SARS-1, and then the MERS, which are all parts of coronaviruses. Now, coronaviruses are not new to us. They've been with us. I'm sure probably they were here before we, as man, became man, as a matter of fact. So they've lived with us. There are about 10 of them that cause common cold every day, in year out, common cold, no problem. We don't have records of people dying from that, but we do have records of people dying from the flu in this country still. 30,000 people about die every year from the flu in this country. So that's serious. 30,000 is a lot of numbers. So one of the issues we're trying to see to make sure we don't add this, SARS on top of it, SARS-2, so that it doesn't begin to continue to kill a whole lot of people. Now, like I said, there are 10 of them. 3 are the ones that have caused disease. Usually respiratory problems have become so lethal to the human being that it's taking lives and livelihoods. And we had the SARS, which initially came from, that's the SARS-1, came from China area as well. I think it was 2003. And then we had the 2015 MERS, which is the Mediterranean uh, portion of it that cut across from the Middle East up to Northeast Africa. Then the SARS-2. So again, because of it's new, it's in our time, and it's spread across the globe, we see what we're seeing. As a matter of fact, when the guys in Asia, in Chinese, when they used to put on the mask and walk around, we all used to see that. We feel very uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable when I see them do international travels, and we see them, but we had no idea what they've gone through, because over time they've had some tiny, tiny episodes, H1N1 and all that and all that. So they know the number of people who've been dead, but it never really crossed across to the West. So we didn't care. But when this one hit, then we had no idea what to do. So of course, the medical field threw everything at it except the kitchen sink. And of course, politics came into it because politicians will always want to stay in power, and they want to use every plus or minus situation to their advantage, to perpetuate themselves in power and to put themselves in power as well. So this stemmed up a whole lot of things. And of course, we have those who are anti-vaxxers who've been brewing on the background forever, and this gave them opportunity for them to come, and everybody just went haywire. But one thing is for sure, that COVID-19 is real, it kills, and we all saw the signs and symptoms. I got sick myself. I know a couple of doctors who got sick. I took care of patients and I knew I was going to get sick. I'm going to catch it one way or the other. But I had no idea how bad and terrible it is until I got it. And that's when I knew, like, hey, now I knew why this thing kills people. The fatigue that comes out of it, the breathing problem, that affects individuals to a point where they have happy hypoxia, meaning for you and I sitting here right now, our oxygen level, if we check it, is about 97, 98. Of course, except those who smoke, where the oxygen, if you have COPD, the oxygen level will come down to like, 95, 94, and down to like 80. Of course, if it's less than 88, then they ask you to carry oxygen. Oxygen level less than 88. Then the doctors will recommend for you to carry oxygen. But COVID will make you have oxygen level in the 70s and you'll still be sitting up and talking and still be looking normal. It would even drop down to about 50s, 60s. And one of my doctors friends who survived COVID, he spent 10 weeks in the ICU. He came into the hospital with an oxygen level of 47. So we had doctors who died, and the blood clots that come out of it, and a whole lot of things that happen. So yes, it kills and it's real. So I don't know up to now, for some people who think it's not real, I'm sure a lot of people have seen that. And each and every one of us, we know somebody, friend, colleague, God forbid, family members who've lost lives. But when I was asked this, Doc, when do you think this will stop? When are we going to stop wearing masks? I remember in 2020, March, I said, we're going to wear masks for the next 3 years. I told people that. And I said that based on the concept of what we knew, what science was on the ground, what vaccines we have available, and what the chances that we will be able to produce vaccines. And that's what I was based on. But then, and I said, look, this thing will be with us forever. I mean, I'm a pediatrician. I give shots on a daily basis and all that. I know the whole gamuts of it. But understanding how some of these things work, it was really scary. So people were scared. They're like, you sure we're going to wear masks for 3 years? I'm like, yes, we're going to wear masks for 3 years. So just be ready. This is here. I hope we'll be able to save ourselves. But then, thank God, the difference between now and 1918 is technology. I mean, each and every one of you, some of you in Nigeria, some of you wherever you are, we're talking, we're connected to one another. You can hear me, I can see you. That's what technology has done. In 1918, they didn't have nothing like this. So we were able to, one, track this disease, know the number of people who are dying at any particular time, and track the disease as it goes from city to city, state to state, and of course, be able to identify the signs and symptoms and identify if it's COVID or if it's just a flu or if it's RSV or human metapneumoviruses. These are other viruses that can present almost like flu-like symptoms as well. So coming from all that, thank God we have the vaccine. Thank God. And that is the beauty of it. Why? Because technology made it possible. Now, one of the issues that have had a lot of people say, like, oh, why all of a sudden they got this vaccine? Vaccines take 4 or 5 years, and those are some of the points that anti-vaxxers want to use. All of a sudden, they have this vaccine in less than 18 months or whatever. How possible? But if you dive down and listen to somebody and people who, unfortunately, this whole thing has been made into a political gimmick, and the past president didn't help matters, and all those across the globe didn't help matters at all. But then the beauty of it is this, or the unfortunate thing is, a lot of people did not listen to doctors, and the doctors were not given the platform to talk, so that we can have direct access to you. The max you can have with your doctor is speaking to your doctor one-on-one, and you only have 15, maximum 30 minutes if you're new. If your follow-up is 15 minutes, and that's what the insurance company will measure. So how many people can you talk to? But thank God for the platform that we have here and the technology that has made it possible. So I always say this, out of every good thing, there are bad fallouts. And out of every bad things, there are good fallouts. Now, the good fallout of this bad situation of COVID is that it leaped us forward 7 years ahead of technology. 7 years. The world has leaped forward. So for everybody sitting down here right now and listening, please pay attention to what's going on around you in the world. The technology is coming and coming so fast. We'll all be dizzy, very dizzy, if you don't pay attention to what's coming. The news is here. Everything is in the fingertips. So look. So why was it possible for them to get this vaccine so quickly? And I tell you again, going back on the history, the whole thing that made it possible for us to have this vaccine, if you have to start the history of it, started in 1972, where I think Dr. Langham wrote a paper, beautiful paper, describing how you can preserve medical materials, increase the shelf life to longer and longer times. And that's why he wrote a polymer, a glycoprotein that can store these things and store it in such a way that by the time you give it, you can give it to the individual and be able to absorb it and break it down slowly. And when he wrote that, people laughed at him. Like, are you kidding me? Are you crazy? This is impossible. This was 1972. It's impossible. You can't do that. But then guess what? Over time, we realized, yes, it was possible. The medication that you take, the vaccines that we even took before, all of those things were based on the brilliant work that he did back then as well. And that was made possible that you can, when you look at your medication, it expires 2025, 2022, 20. These are the technologies that be able to show, to tell us, yes, with the mechanism of carbon dating and all that, to tell us, yes, this will live this long, and that's how far. Now, stemming forward to 2020, 18 and 19, no, 2013, after the issue of the MARS came up, people started working on the results and finding ways of which to curb epidemics. And some of you, if you know, people like Bill Gates and all that, they've always been saying, look, epidemics is going to happen someday. Pandemics will happen someday. And, again, people turn the whole thing around and like, oh, Bill Gates, they orchestrated this and all that and all that. Look, just like we, for those who have read the good books, there've been prophets over time who come and ring the bell. Hey, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. Because you know why? If I stand and say, hey, this is going to happen, how many people will listen to me? They will not. But if I say the same thing standing next to Bill Gates, guess what? People will listen because people want to listen to Bill Gates. So, and I tell people this, Bill Gates became the mouthpiece of doctors, warning each and every one of us that these things are going to happen. These things are going to happen. It's inevitable. If you see how things are moving forward and see things are going, they were bound to happen. The handwriting was on the wall all along, all along. But if I stood and said that, or if Dr. Ogrima or Dr. O says and said that, no, and now she's a big internet person, maybe they'll listen to her. But if I said it, they won't listen to me. But they will not listen to me. But if I tell Bill Gates or stand next to Bill Gates to say it, of course they will listen. And these were some of the reasons that this thing happened. Now, again, the first technology to produce vaccines actually started in late 1940s. Late 1940s. Because I like giving historic perspective so that we understand where things are coming from. Because if I make you understand, you would accept it. If I make you understand, you accept it. Now, vaccines have been around with us forever. I mean, we use for chickenpox, polio, all of those things that we use it for. But the technology for creating vaccines started in late 1940s. And for some who are much older, they remember when they used to give the big guns to give the polio shots. And then the oral one came up and all that, the different types. But that technology was still very old. From way back then till now, we didn't have any new method for creating vaccines. And then, because of COVID, the mRNA technology came around. But I'll tell you the story of mRNA. The mRNA was not actually meant for vaccines. It wasn't. If you look up somebody's name, Dr. Catalina Garcia, she's a Hungarian who came from Hungary. I mean, I'll give you a little story about her. She has a child, a baby, who eventually became an Olympian, a rowing Olympian here in the United States. But when she and her husband were in Hungary, they were going to come here. She was coming for her PhD programs and all that. They didn't have enough money to even pay the ticket, both of them. So she had to come first. And she came, she worked in UPenn. And she worked in UPenn, did all her work. So, but she read about a procedure from another great doctor who wrote an article then, a few years back, saying you can use mRNA to treat diseases. So she read that. Now, but how to use that to treat disease, he just wrote it, but he didn't know how to do this. So Catalina Garcia started working on that, worked on it earnestly. And when she did, initially she tested in the mice, they were dying. They were dying. And then she met this young guy who they met at, a convention. And that's why, again, when people say, oh, you Africans, you Black people, you sit and talk too much. No, it is important you come together and talk. Because if you do not talk to one another, you don't know what the research and the resources that the individual who is standing in front of you has. And you can't share ideas. So he met, and the guy he met was a Black guy, a Black man. When they went for a conference and they met, they talked, and he said, look, I have this problem. And he said, what's the problem? That when I do this mRNA and I give it to mice, they all die off, they bleed, they blah, blah. And the guy said, okay, fine. He looked at it and said it was the thymine component of that mRNA that was causing the problem. If you delete that thymine component, you do well. And she went, they deleted it, boom, voila. The mice were living. So that's a huge step for us to get into where we were. So when she was able to get this done, but it was so fragile. It was so fragile, they need to preserve it. So again, she met the doctor who wrote the paper in 1972. They now collaborated. That's why they were able to preserve that mRNA that was now safe now into that Langer's product that was written in 1972. So you see, things have been coming all through. And that's the history of some of these things, so that we understand where we're coming from, so that we'll not be afraid, especially for us who are Black. We cannot be afraid of technology. We must, one, learn technology, understand technology, accept technology, and utilize technology for our own good. And each and every one of us here will have to be advocates for that. Now, coming to that, she saw Catalina, she's like, you know what, I'm going to do the vaccine so that we can treat diabetes. We can treat rheumatoid arthritis. And that's what she was going to make it for. But unfortunately, when this came up, hey, we threw everything at it except the COVID, except the kitchen sink. And that's where the story of COVID vaccines came about. Now, when it came up, the whole world was in chaos. We're losing money, blah, blah, blah. Signs and symptoms, people are dying, people are still dying. Politics came about. And then we have the Brazilian strain, we have the South African strain, we have the British strain, and all the strains they were calling names of countries. But every time they call it names of countries, guess what? People start ostracizing people from those countries. They're like, no, we can't do that. There's a politics. All right, let's start giving it Delta, Alpha, all this. So they started calling it, what they call it, the Greek names. And that's why you have the Delta. And that's the Delta that eventually came out from Brazil all the way to South Africa, all the way to Europe, and then did the devastating job it did in India. Of course, and then came to Omicron. Now, why is this important? Because I'll tell you this. Viruses, like each and every one of us, the paramount thing why we're here on Earth is to propagate, period. That's the reason why we're here. Everything else is just, like the Nigerian would say, Jara, extra. Our primary purpose of here is to propagate, meaning you pass your DNA down to your next generation. Once you've done that, you've done the job that God has asked you to do here. But we, as a people, all through evolution and all the things we've done, we've been able to preserve and change our environment so that we don't die and we can preserve ourselves to pass our DNA to generations coming. Viruses do the same. They do. They don't want to die too. They're living. They want to propagate. So what do? They change their DNA or the RNA so that they do not die. And they're able to do it quicker. I mean, we have a lifespan, what? 60, 70 for those by issue of strength, 70 plus more. But viruses, theirs is really very quick. So they change their DNA because they can't change their environment. They change their DNA for those that are made from DNA, and those that are made from RNA, they change their RNA so that they can propagate. And that's what they do. It's expected. And that's why over the years, we've had different strains of the flu vaccine and all the other things, flu and all the other viruses that we get all the time. And that's why you find out that the vaccine that was used for flu last year is not the same vaccine that we use for flu this year. And viruses have two ways they do that. There's what they call the antigenic shift, antigenic drift. So they shift a component of their RNA or the DNA so that it escapes the thing that's going to kill, it escapes your immune system. Because they know your immune system is after them and they want to kill your immune system, want to kill them. So what do? They shift it or they complete drift. So when there's a huge complete drift out of it, you find out that you have to create new types of vaccine to curb that new strain that came out. So the same thing the COVID is doing. It's going to do that. Now, they do that for three reasons. One, to escape your immune system so that your immune system do not detect them or kill them. It's just like going stealth. We have our technology, they go stealth or they camouflage. You understand? I mean, we see chameleons that do that. It's a protective way. They do that. They escape your immune system, or they escape the vaccines that you've been smart enough to produce. That's what they do. First thing they do. Second thing they do, they create some genetic modulations that would enable them to be highly infective. So that if before I need maybe 5,000 cells to move from one generation to another generation to infect people, they shift it no longer 5, it's at 2,500 only. And sometimes if it gets really bad, they shift it down to only 500. So you have only 500 of them that needed to infect the person, and the person will get sick so that they can pass on. The third person, what they do is they create severe diseases in such a way that once they catch you, they will decimate that immune system, decimate the person to a point where they can now pass on to the next person quickly. So those three methods is how they do it. So that's what viruses do. That's what COVID-19 is doing, and that's what Omicron is doing. But the beauty of it all,
So
I mean, at this point in time, I must say great thank you to the guys in South Africa.
For the invoice, what will be the total English. Well, I mean, all the different parts.
Damian,
You didn't add it up yet?
Please mute
Kindly mute yourself, please.
God,
Please mute yourself.
why
Thank
you
you.
thinking about yourself? I
Please
put
mute
you.
yourself.
Oh, okay. At the time, yeah. At the
Kindly
time.
mute yourself.
well, maybe somebody should mute him.
I'm trying to look for the person. I can't even
Okay,
find it.
Damian,
well, wonderful. So,
Dublin, Damian. All right.
Is it Dr. Damien?
Yeah. So, I must, like I said, give great kudos to the amazing scientists in South Africa. I mean, they are super smart and they are amazing. They have great surveillance system and they have great scientists and great models. They were able to identify this, not discover it. I don't like using the word discover because when you meant discover, meaning it was found there. No, it was identified there. But unfortunately, this virus has been around for a long time. So they were able to identify and not just do that, but tell the world, like, listen, what we see here is a viral strain of huge significance. And I'll tell you why it's such a huge significance. Because it has a potential to do serious damage, serious damage. They identified it in November 24, 25, and they came out to the world and like, listen, this is what we have. This is what it is. Now, why is this important? Because from some of the reports says it has about 50 mutations, 50 mutations. On the spike protein alone, there are about 32 of them. On the receptor, so when you see such mutations coming out, it's scary. And because of the technology we have, we can, from chromatography and all the other analysis, we can tell that one strain or one mutation represents so and so. This precision, but with 32, they had no idea. They knew what some of them were, but they didn't know what the other were. So they could not hold it and say, you know what, let's find out what this is. So that's why they came out to the world. Like, listen, this is what we found. Please be careful. This has a potential to escape your immune system. It has a potential to infect people easily. It has the potential to kill people easily. So when they came out and they said it, oh, the whole world went crazy, And of course, nothing can come out of Africa. So they started banning African countries, South African. They started banning them. Nothing good can come out of Bethlehem, So they started banning. How dare those damn South Africans are smart enough to identify something we can't tell? How dare? All right, you get punished for it. But again, they did their job, and we should be glad. In fact, as a matter of fact, let's all clap for them. Let's all clap for them. Clap. Let's clap for South African scientists, man. They did great. They saved the world. So, but what we know so far is this, that it's really very highly infective. In fact, from the original virus that came out of Wuhan, it's about 500% times more infective than the one that came out of Wuhan, 500 times. Now, for Delta, which was still the predominant variant that we have in the world right now, is about 4 times more infective than that. So you can imagine something that is 4 times more infective than Delta. But then, thank God, the severity of the disease is not that bad from what we see so far. And the means to escape the immune system, they haven't really said. They think the vaccines that we have right now can still handle the Omicron. And that's why they say, get your vaccine. And for those who haven't gotten their vaccine, get your booster. So in South Africa, the whole lot of people are getting infected very, very, very fast, and it's spreading around fast. Now, why is this important, the dates that we talked about? Because, and this is where the politics and the whole thing, medicine has now become very political. It has. And I always say, look, everything is politics. Even in your own house, there's a whole politics. The way you deal with your children, you get political about them. There's some you can say, go get me this. And the others you'll be afraid to tell, because if you tell them, they won't do it until next year. So, but again, it's all about politics and all that. We do that all the time. So it was identified and the whole world was told in November 24th. But guess what? Some of the samples that were taken of people who came on Schiphol Airport. Schiphol Airport is in the Netherlands. On 11th and 12th of November, before it was identified in South Africa from the ones that came from Botswana, actually had Omicron. So Omicron has been around, but nobody picked it up. But the South Africans were able to pick it up, and that's the reason why we should give them huge kudos for doing that. So this thing would have just slowly, quietly spread around and caused a whole lot of damage, and it caused a whole lot of problems. Now, testing. We're able to test this Omicron and test it really well, because, I mean, the test that we do shows positive or negative. You don't know if you have Omicron if you don't. Unless they go and do a DNA analysis or genetic analysis of the virus, that's when you'll be able to tell. But it's easy for them to do that, because in the Delta, there are 3 areas that it lights up. But Omicron lights up in 2 areas, and it lights up so quickly. Maybe because of the genetic, modification that they have. So it lights up quickly. So with those samples, you can really tell and then do a full DNA analysis and can actually tell what's the area it is. Now, why are they shutting borders? Well, again, studies have shown that closing borders do not save anybody. Oh, let me see. Let me check my wire. I think it's let me make sure I hook my phone, my laptop properly before it dies on me. So we know that shutting borders does not save anything. I mean, we already know, like I just said, that the Omicron was already in Holland before it was actually identified in South Africa. So, and shutting down borders don't change, it doesn't change the spread of viruses. Viruses spread really fast and well. Sorry. Yeah, so viruses spread and spread really fast. So, and it's real. So with the Omicron, like I said, thank God, the severity of the disease is not that bad. Now, and people wonder why. Is it because the mutation in that area is not as bad? But you can draw deductions in the sense that, one, those of us who are alive right now are those who survived, who got COVID and survived it. A whole lot of people are no longer here. That's one. Two, those who are here are those who already have had the vaccine or the booster already. So the guys in South Africa that right now we see the disease is not causing so much damage, well, like we already know, don't let me say that, but you know the thing didn't affect too many Africans, right? The virus, they killed a lot. it did not, but that's a story for another day. So when Europe and America were afraid, they're like, man, these guys are bringing this black virus. The first one didn't kill them, and now there's a black virus with a whole lot of infectivity that's going to come to Europe. This might truly kill all of us. So they're really angry and they're pissed off. Other than the fact that those scientists there were wants to identify it. So of course, you understand their fear. You understand their fear because when the original virus came, I was really dismayed. I was dismayed when they told us that 1.6 million Africans would die. 1.6 million Africans would die from the original one that came up from Wuhan. I was dismayed that how dare they say that? And it's WHO that was saying that. Because they said, oh, they looked at their structure, they look at the healthcare system, they look at all of these things that they have none. So if this is going to spread and it's killing people in China, killing people, then it's going to kill all these people in Africa. But guess what? Thank God. Thank God for the black DNA. The original DNA, I say. Thank God for that. It did not. So, and now we have the Omicron, and the Omicron is not doing that much damage. Is it here? Yes. We have 25 states here in the US that has Omicron identified already. Would it eventually become the dominant strain? Yes, most likely with the infectivity, but hopefully it will not do that much damage. But how do we know that? A lot of us have been vaccinated. For those who are not vaccinated, this may truly do damage. So please, again, like somebody will always say, and I say this, there's an African adage that if you hear good news, you listen with both ears. So I've just given the history, I've given a whole lot. I hope you've heard with both ears. So listen and go and spread the word and take your vaccines. And I will take questions as we go on. Thank you.
Thank you, President.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aluya. That was fantastic. You know, COVID-19. The 3 years is almost here. And I don't know, we may need masks even longer than that. So one of the statements you made, if I can ask this question of Bad, is that it didn't affect people in Africa that much. I happened to be in Nigeria in March last year, you know, in the heart of all of this. In fact, I had to rush back, change my flight when the borders were being shut down. And people were saying that it's the disease of rich people. Some people were saying that because of the sun, because it's so hot, people will not get COVID. Yet I diagnosed quite a bit of COVID and treated quite a bit of them. We don't have good data in many African countries. I don't want to generalize. We don't have good testings. We don't have good access to testing. So if you don't test, you don't know. A lot of people get sick and, you know, I talk to them sometimes, they tell me they have severe malaria and severe typhoid. I've never heard that until COVID times. And I tell them all the time, go and test. This is COVID. For the people who listened and tested, it is COVID. So can you comment on that? Because are we really sure that people are really not getting the virus, or they have strong enough immune system that they have mild disease or don't have symptoms when they get it?
I'll take it in multiple prongs. Okay. One, Africa has the youngest population on earth, the youngest. Number 1 to number 30 on that list is all African countries. Number 1 is Niger. Number 2, Democratic Republic of Congo. Number 3 is Chad. And number 4 is Uganda. 5, I can't remember, but number 6 on that list is Nigeria, the youngest population. On the average, about 18 years old in the whole of Africa. So, and you know that the younger you are, the less chances of you to have severe, what do you call it? Signs and symptoms.
Severe disease.
That's one. So age is 1. 2, now when you talk about infectivity, because for the virus to get into you, it gets into your airways, right? And from the airways, it has to attach to receptors. So if those are receptors, right, they're open. And if you have like 5, let's say one receptor is 1,000. So this is 5,000 cells. Now, if you have 3,000 viruses, they only attach to this cells, and you have the rest cells. And these receptors are called the ACE receptor, angiotensin, enzyme receptors, right? That's what they're called. Now, the more viruses you have, the more the receptors are attached to. Now, the younger you are, the less of the receptor you have. So if you're 3-4 years old, rather than you having 50,000 ACE receptor, you may have 20,000 ACE receptors. So the maximum number of viruses that can get into you will be only 20,000. Now, as you grow older, the receptors increases. That's totally normal. So as you grow up from 20 years or 40 years old, your receptor may now be 100,000, 2 million, 5 million. So you now have more 5 million cells of the virus getting to you. So age is a big issue, and the number of receptors increases with age. Now, with age and people in Africa, the younger you are, the less life chances you're going to get diabetes, high blood pressure, and the attendant disease that come with it. So meaning chronic kidney disease, chronic lung disease, chronic heart disease, and all that, because you're young. You didn't have none of those. Because the sicker you are, the upregulation of those receptors. So if you are a 50-year-old man with 50,000 receptors, ACE receptors, and you now have diabetes, guess what? That has now become 150,000. On top of that, you now had high blood pressure. That's now become 250,000. So you now have 250,000 cells. Now, on top of that, if your kidney fails, guess what? That's now 500,000. If you smoke along with it, and you have lung disease, that's 2 million. Then bless you if you're now obese on top of it. Because we know these are all the things that upregulate your immune, the receptor cells. So, and they said 50, you have a 30% chance of dying from COVID if you're obese. It's fact. Studies shown that. So coming to Africa, breaking it down, age, you're young, less receptors, and less disease. So less upregulation of those receptors. Now, coming to our environment where we live, vitamin D, huge, huge factor, huge. In fact, like I always used to joke, and I said, God put the sun there for a reason and started humanity in Africa for a reason. God put the sun there for a reason and started humanity in Africa for a reason. Now, unfortunately, for those of us who moved out of Africa, I mean, all of humanity moved out of Africa. The Caucasians and the Chinese that you see now, they left Africa about 30, 35,000 years ago. Really, truly, that's when they left. So over time, they evolved and there were genetic modulations that took place for them to be able to accept the environment that they live in and adapt to the environment. Some of us just left, the black race left Africa 500 years ago. I mean, we were forced out, but that's a different story. Only 500 compared to 500 to 30,000. So, and that's why in the Western world, we fare worse in this environment than those who left 30,000 years ago. So the people who you see who left are the ones who survived those processes, and that's why they're doing so well. Now, in Africa, vitamin D is so vital to us because one, it increases your innate immunity. So studies have shown that those who have vitamin D 30 and above has over 25% less chance of dying and even 40 to 43% chance of less severe disease from COVID. Fact, stated. So vitamin D, because again, you're young. So when you're young, what do? You don't stay indoors, you're out there. Playing soccer, playing whatever it is. One, you're young, you're going out to hustle. You hustle for food, you hustle for money. So because you're young and you're hustling, you're out in the sun. So the more vitamin D you get. So when they said it was a big man's disease, yes, because big men, what do? They don't come out in the sun. They move from air-conditioned room to air-conditioned living room, air-conditioned living room to air-conditioned cars, from air-conditioned cars to air-conditioned office and restaurants. So how much vitamin D do they get? They don't. So they live their life like they live in the temperate region. And that's why it was affecting them so much more. And remember, again, those who have vitamin D deficiency are likely, because they have a much more sedentary lifestyle, they are more likely to have diabetes. Please Google vitamin D and diabetes. Huge correlation. Studies that were done in 2012, 13, 14, 17 have shown that. Huge correlation between vitamin D and diabetes. And we know what diabetes has done with COVID and everything else. And for those who fare worse with gestational diabetes, the vitamin D level is usually low as well. Because it's been shown that if you have a high amount of vitamin D, the chance of you having gestational diabetes is so much less. So that's why it's important. So all of these factors, you understand, are the reason why we fare better than everybody else. But I'll give you the last one. The last one is this. And these were studies that were done in the West African coast area, from Sierra Leone to Senegal and to Liberia. What did they do? They checked their level. Because so what they now do now, they go back because COVID is here. They want to see what the heck is wrong with these Black people. Why are they not feeling sick from this virus? So they're looking. We don't have the money to do the test. They're doing the test because they really want to find out. So what did they do? From samples they took during the Ebola time and during the Lassa fever time, the samples that they have. So they went back and started testing those samples and see if they have antibodies against COVID, or that will have cross-reactivity against COVID, SARS-2. And they really begin to see that, hey, you know what? We've seen a whole lot of antibodies against COVID in these Black people's blood. And for those who already have COVID, or who had Lassa fever and survived also Ebola, that their antibodies have a protective cross-reactivity against SARS-2. So maybe that's another reason why they're surviving. So these are some of the things that these guys are looking at, and they're seeing and coming up like, hey, that's the reason why. So the whole gamut of things why we're surviving this. But you know what? Who cares? We're surviving, we're doing well. The Black DNA rocks.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. And by God's grace, we will continue to do well. I will say, though, before we go to questions in the chat, that it is still very upsetting that it seems South Africa was punished for being at the cutting edge of medicine, for being at the cutting edge of science. If Britain had found Omicron, I don't think they will be red flagged. I just don't think so. So things need to change, you know, when it comes to us, people of color. We are very intelligent, and I think we should be compensated instead of chastised when we contribute significantly to the world health and other things. Anyways, I just have to say that. So we have some questions in the chat.
Well, before we go to questions, again,
Okay.
You hear me say medical advocacy. I mean, look, I'm sure you've heard me say this, that each and every one of us in this generation are the ones who would take charge and leadership, not just charge, and leadership of your individual spaces, and find innovative ways of solving problems. Innovative meaning using science to solve problems that come out of your individual space. So if you're in high tech, please do that. If you're in medicine, do that. If you're in accounting, engineering, whatever it is that you're doing, please do that. And if you don't know how to do it, encourage those who are doing it. Encourage them, especially when they are Black, because that's the only people who will save us. Look, it's become really clear, evident, that nobody will save the Black man except the Black man, period. Period. And like you said, we're smart, we're intelligent, we're vibrant, and all that. But we must put all our resources together to be able to do this. Again, resources, what? Your time, your money, and your intellect. So if you have money, bring it. Because you may have money, but you don't have the time or the intellect. But if you have the intellect, but you don't have the time or the money, bring your intellect. Whatever you have, bring it together so that we will save ourselves. And I always say, so that 10, 20 years from now, we will not beg that they take their knee off our neck.
Dr. Aluya, thank you so much for the wonderful information. Now go to the questions in the chat. How effective are the present vaccines against Omicron?
Well, like I alluded to, it's been said to be effective. Remember, I said three things. They try to evade your immune system or evade the vaccine. We haven't had the proof for that yet. So, I mean, there may be politics in vaccines or whatever it is. They're pushing for booster. Why? Because the more the booster you get, the more your immune, response is higher, and the more protective you should be. So yes, the president and CEO of Pfizer was saying the other day that we may eventually need the fourth dose, but that's, who knows? And some people got angry with that. But then again, that's another story in terms of sales and marketing and all that. But these are the things they're saying. So don't be surprised. Things are coming up. But the more of the vaccine response, antigenic response that you get, the more likely you're going to protect yourself. Two, is it escaping your immune system? Most likely not yet. We haven't seen people dying. Is it highly effective? Yes, 500 times from the Wuhan, 4 times from Delta. The fourth dose, is the severity of the disease high? No, not yet. So it still works.
Now, the booster shots, are they necessary if one is fully vaccinated?
Sorry, I missed that.
Are the booster shots really necessary if one is fully vaccinated?
Well, I'll tell you this. In all sincerity, yes. I mean, from the beginning, I said this when we got the vaccine. And we learn a lot of things from the things we do for children. For those who've had children, those who have young children, just pay attention. The first time during the flu season, when they give your child a vaccine, they usually start at age 6 months. And when they do the 6 months, they give half a dose at 6 months, and a month after, they give the second dose. The reason why they're doing that is to first check to see if there's an allergic alternate or adverse reaction. Then the second dose is actually to boost or upregulate your immune, load or response. So, and that's what we do for children. And it actually protects them even much more. Like I said, 30,000 people still die every year in this country from flu. So the first one to give, yes. The second one, remember, when you give, I'll give you an example. So if the first vaccine gives you your immune system here, and this is protection. So if you give the second one, it gives it up here. Now, if you get a booster, it pushes it up here. So the higher you are, the better for you. Remember, the technology that was used to create vaccines from the 1940s and 50s actually did give us maximum 65%. Maximum 65, but this is giving up 95 to 98% immune response, which is amazing. We've never had anything like this. It's like driving a Mercedes-Benz 500 SEL 2022 as compared to 500 SEL, the Beast. That's what they call the Beast 600 or 1980. If they ask you to choose one, which one would you choose? Of course, you're going to choose the 2022 one because it's faster, it's better, and safer. So yes, that's the reason why. Now, coming to the booster, it's important for elderly people, for those who are 65 years and above, because as we grow older, our bone marrow is the one that's responsible for producing red blood cells, producing cells that protect you from bleeding to death, cells that protect your body from infection. But as we grow older, they get stiffer, the blood supply is less, they produce less. So it therefore means your immune response to protect you from diseases is equally less. So once you do that, you're going to trigger certain immune system to remember more stuff so that it can produce more. So elderly, and if you have chronic medical disease, meaning heart disease that's chronic, lung disease, kidney disease, liver disease, any chronic disease, those are individuals that truly, truly, truly need it.
Thank you so much. Whilst it's reassuring to hear that Omicron has so far been quite mild in South Africa, do we have any information on case severity in the Western Hemisphere yet?
So far, no. In all sincerity, I guess, politically, that's one of the reasons why they're closing their borders. I mean, in as much as it doesn't protect anybody, it hasn't seemed to stem the disease. But in all sincerity, and I say this sometimes, if you're in a car and a traffic light or in traffic, and your car, you roll your window down because it's too hot, probably, I don't know, maybe your air conditioner, you just want to get fresh air. And the next thing in front of you, you see a column of gas coming. What's the first thing you do? The first instinct is to roll up your windows. You're not going to ask where the gas is coming from or what's happening. You will roll up your windows. So again, that's the response that a lot of people are doing, rolling up their windows as a sign of protection. Because you know what? If they don't roll up those windows, you who's here will begin to call on the government, like, how are you protecting us? What are you doing? You live in the borders and people are coming in and out anyhow, and we hear Omicron is on those places. You're not doing anything? Of course. Then the next time you will not vote him in. So the knee-jerk response is to shut down the borders first, and then see if truly that as we shut down the borders, so that it will give you time to understand what the virus is. Because again, this thing came out, most people didn't know what it was. It will give them 2 weeks, the minimum, to understand what the disease is, so that they can truly identify what those sections of mutations are, how effective and all that. So that's one of the reasons why, again, political wise, yes, because it's only when you wear those shoes, you understand why you need to make those decisions. So, as hard as it may be.
Thank you so much. I see a hand up. Tawa, please unmute and let's hear your question or comment.
Good evening, Dr. Aluya. Thank you for the presentation. It's interesting and wonderful. Thank you. I have my sister here from Nigeria, and I took her today to get a booster dose. And they started giving us a runaround because she got AstraZeneca in Nigeria. And I took her to Walgreens to get Pfizer. And they wouldn't. They went through their corporate, and their corporate office said, oh, they have nothing about AstraZeneca, so they can, if it is JJ, if it's Moderna. But I have a couple of pharmacist brothers. So I called them right there. And one of them called me back and said, bring her to my store. We'll give it to her. And we went and they gave her the Pfizer. But is there any, because in the news, I knew that they said that they can mismatch, you can get anything. But the way they were talking is like, no. Is there anything wrong with AstraZeneca? Why you can't get a Pfizer or Moderna or JJ?
Right, and I'll say this, information is power. Information is power. The AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson were made not from the mRNA technology, it was actually made by infusing the COVID virus into a larger cell, which is the, what's that virus that they use? Adenovirus. So they injected the virus into the adenovirus, and that's why they were able to produce it. So, but one of the things that they got out of that, if you remember, the Johnson & Johnson was the issue of strokes, right? The same thing was the AstraZeneca. But again, that's where the politics hit the ground. There was no AstraZeneca in this country. It was only Johnson & Johnson. And there was no Johnson & Johnson outside in Europe. It was AstraZeneca. Again, that's the politics of the whole play. But here in this country, and they should have known that AstraZeneca is the same thing as Johnson & Johnson. And here, if you've had the Johnson & Johnson, a month after you had the Johnson & Johnson, you can get the booster shot. It doesn't stop you. But because they're sticklers for rules, and they've not had the time to really get informed about all of this, that's why like, oh, no, because they don't want to give your sister Pfizer, and then the next thing something happens, you'll be suing them. So,
Exactly.
So that's why. But if they understood, they should have known it's the same thing as the Johnson & Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aluya. There are a couple of questions coming in. Dr. Bill, can you please unmute and ask your questions or comments?
Greetings, Dr. Aluya. A fabulous presentation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have 1,000 questions, of course, at this point. First and foremost, we hear about breakthroughs. What's creating that? Maybe I'll give you two, and then you can work on those two. And when I get an opportunity, I'll give you the rest. A MD out of Africa brought us information on ivermectin. Where did that come from? Those two questions.
Right. Breakthrough. Listen, we have what, 7.2 billion people on Earth. So breakthroughs are bound to happen. I mean, things are about to happen. I'll give you a typical example. In my office, I've had 2 or 3 people within the last short period come in with Bell's palsy. You know what Bell's palsy is, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
So where the whole mouth is all it's viral. Some of them it's still contention. Now the question is this: there's a whole lot of report then, and I'll come to what your question. The whole lot of report that said, oh, that the vaccine was causing a lot of people would have more Bell's palsy. But then guess what? When they did the meta-analysis, they found out that it was 0.3% as compared to 15% that happens anyways before COVID even happened. So was it the vaccine that was causing it? No. It's like giving somebody what do you call it? Somebody who was supposed to have a heart attack, today, and then you you give him a vaccine, and then he gets a heart attack today. Oh, it's the vaccine that caused it. But you won't say the same thing if somebody got a vaccine today and got an accident tomorrow. You're not going to say it's the vaccine that caused it. No, we just accept that, right? So again, everybody's immune response is totally different. We have 7.something billion, 330 million people in this country. So you don't expect everybody to have the same immune system. Like I said earlier on, you give the shot, some people shots are here, you give the sub, some people here, and some people get here. So the guy who's here, who never mounts a response, who gets sick. How do we know that? We knew that from hepatitis B. There are people who are called non-converters. You give 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, you check the level, 10 and above, 15. You give those non-converters 3 shots, nothing. You check, it's only 2. You give another shot again, it's only 5. They never get up to 10. So yes, those people are bound to have breakthroughs. That's one. So everybody's immune response is not the same. We need to expect that. And you see, again, knowledge is power. We need to explain to people that these things happen so that their mind, they'll be rest assured and be at peace with what's going on. Now with ivermectin is a drug that's used to treat worms. Listen, they used it in this country also. I swear, they were living like some people living in Africa right now. They lived in the same country here. They had worms and all that. But with time and development, things change. Okay, fine. Now they give it to their animals, the cattle and the horses, right? Mm-hmm. We still have worms in back home in Africa. Well, the jury's out there. There are protective reasons why we have worms, because then we don't deal with autoimmune diseases like they have here. That's another story. We can go into that another day. But ivermectin has been used. Well, in fact, there's a study that came out of Bangladesh a few while ago, and that's what people run with. You see, when people are desperate and they want something that will give them some form of succor, what do? They hold on to the slightest information that gives them some form of reassurance. And that reassurance came from the study that was done in Bangladesh that showed that a few people who took the ivermectin did better than a few people who did not. But guess what? Those were people in Bangladesh. Do we know what was in the food that protected them? We don't know that. Why didn't they do the same study in Africa? You understand? So yes. When anti-vaxxers and everybody saw that, they held on to that. Oh, this is what's happening. You understand? But for sure, we know that chloroquine and mefloquine, they have anti-inflammatory effect. They really do. So if you give those things, they may reduce your inflammation. And inflammation is a body's reaction to an infection. It's protective up to a certain level, but if it goes past a certain level, it becomes detrimental to the individual. COVID resets that bar to a point where the inflammation and the fever that you get becomes detrimental. So probably that's why for those who use chloroquine or whatever at the very ab initio, the very stage, they do well. You can't do that when the person is full blown. The person will die. You understand? So, but here in the United States, the ivermectin that we have are all potent doses for animals, for cows, for horses. There are no small dose for human beings like they have outside. So if you're going to take an ivermectin dose here, you're overdosing yourself. So we've had a lot of people who overdose here, and they end up in the hospital. It's so funny. These are people who, like, if I write down, doc, what's the side effects? And they're taking, they're asking me side effects even before they take the prescription. And then they're swallowing ivermectin from the backyard. I can't get that. You understand? So, and those doses are so huge, and they're landing them in the hospitals. So please be careful. Right now, there's a whole lot of drugs that are coming out. There's one that's being done by, I think, Glasgow, that shows that on the DNA of the COVID, if this is the DNA, so what that drug does, it's an antiretroviral drug. Glasgow they're working on it. They have a name for it, I can't remember. In fact, it was actually first written by somebody in Ohio that did some of the study that's showing that it goes to the areas and it's like a sledgehammer, boom, 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 to those areas where the DNA is. So one of the concerns that they had was, oh, if it's going to do that, how about if it mutates, meaning the virus will not be able to mutate against the medication? But the guys who did this, because he started working on it after the MERS came up. That's why he started doing research. He just started doing his own thing. And then now it's become the big issue. So those are the tablets that's going to come up. That this just goes to every section of the DNA. It's like a sledgehammer, bam, 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 breaking the DNA structure. So most likely you'll do well. It's still in trials. We'll wait to see how that goes.
Well, I wanted to comment on ivermectin. I actually was involved in a study with the University of Lagos on ivermectin in early treatment. The countries who published studies, they published studies on ivermectin as being effective if used early in the course of COVID. Once somebody gets really sick and they need hospitalization, it wasn't effective. And what was done in our setting was looking at ivermectin in people who were hospitalized, which it won't do what it's supposed to do because they've, gone past that window. So I was involved in a study at University of Lagos, but unfortunately, they didn't make a headway with this study. They said something about there were too many patients, there wasn't enough testing, so they could not test like they should. Test the patients that were put on the medication. And Dr. Aluya, I don't know, but in the US and in Nigeria at least, I've not seen a dose of ivermectin higher than 3 milligrams.
Here in the US, the doses that they have are horses doses. So that's why.
No, the 3 milligram doses I've seen, but it's dosed by weight. So I've not seen that, it's this, I don't know who came up with this horse treatment and all of that. They still use ivermectin in Nigeria.
Yeah, in Nigeria, yes. They still, like I said, they still use ivermectin in developing countries, but there are doses that cut out for human consumption. But here in the US, where people are touching it and pushing it without having done the research here, it's really high doses. I mean, like I think maybe 10 or whatever. And that's what's causing issues, and people end up in the hospital.
I've only seen 3
Really?
milligrams. I've only seen
That's
3
interesting.
milligrams. And also it is in combination with vitamin D. That's what they've been using, plus zinc and even quercetin. So those are some of the things which are floating around in terms of the protocols. I understand that it came out of, that there was a study coming out of Lagos about that, but we're only using 3 milligrams in terms of what is available to the populace if they wanted to buy it at this point.
Right. Well, zinc, vitamin D is huge. Zinc is also very good because what it does, it's in the microtubules, because this is the receptor. The virus gets into the receptor, gets into the tubules. As they go into the microtubules, they go into the cells. That's the tube. It's like the food, you eat it. Now, what zinc does, this is this line, this tube that it passes through to the cytoplasm is actually acidic. What the zinc does, it actually changes the milieu into a base. So the virus gets in like, hey, this is supposed to be acid. What's going on here? Zinc is causing trouble. And changes the milieu into a base milieu. And that's what kills the virus. And the virus does not like it. That's how zinc works.
Interesting, interesting.
Yes. And it's nice to add vitamin C to that
That mix.
to that mix. Yeah.
Yes.
Knowledge is power.
Absolutely. That's why we're here, because we don't want to be in the dark anymore. And that's why we come week after week to get educated. It's time that we get educated. That's why we're here.
Dr.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Have you heard of Dr. June Kress-Welsing and her study with melanin, which came out in the late 50s? And how she basically said melanin was a very similar to vitamin D in terms of people of color. That's why we had a greater ability to stay well, even though our diet basically destroyed our advantage. And she was in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
June Kress.
I'd like to see that. Can you send me the study, please, if you can fish it out?
It's 55 pages.
Right?
Well,
Well, I mean, and that's why we need more people to get into research. And I must say this, and it's a shame, but disgracefully, a lot of the medications that we take, and I tell people that all the time. Look, you have to encourage your children to go into science and tech. You have to. Within the last 20 years, there's a huge drop, especially of Black male doctors who go into medicine. Huge drop. So, and we say this every time when we do the things that we do. I have a Physician Health Network. I mean, Dr. O, you've seen it. We did one on Saturday where we constantly advocate that young Black men to go into medicine. Because down the road, will be very rare. We'll become a rare species. You won't see us. And we know that studies have shown that you're likely to do better and live better and longer if you're taken care of by somebody who looks like you, period. I mean, that study went even as low as babies in the neonatology. Those babies in the baby who just came on this earth, they don't know nobody, they don't know no name, they're not influenced with socio-economic or whatever structure. But when they're taken by people who take care of, by people who look like them, they do better than those who are not. So it's important. So, and that's why we need to have more and more of us, because the tablets that we swallow every day, how many of those tablets and the research that were done had a whole number of people who were like you that were represented in the study? Very. I mean, the maximum, somebody, because I constantly ask this thing, the maximum I've heard is 5%. I mean, 5% of the population of a study is Black. How the heck do I know that those things will truly work for me? I don't know that. I really don't. So if we're not at the table, you will be what? The menu. So we have to get on the table. And for us to get on the table, you have to get what? Be informed, be educated, and come with full understanding.
Absolutely.
And with a mission as well.
Yes.
Until we do that, then we're wasting our time and we'll continue to waddle in the dark consistently. You know, I mean, look, if you take studies across all through every day, more Black doctors are dying from heart disease, more Black doctors are dying from heart failure, more Black doctors are ending up on dialysis. Why? And yet we're having this, it's not just, again, it's not just the social structure and bias, implicit or explicit biases in medicine. We have different genetics in the way our DNA works. We must understand that. And if you look in your report, the next time they give you a report, a lab result, look at it. Look at it well. You'll find that now, within the last 5 years, they've differentiated GFR, which is the function of your kidney.
Yes.
They now say Black, African American, and non-African Americans. They never did that because they understand that we're different. So what does that tell us? So please, and if you can't do medicine, encourage those who will. And if you're going to leave money somewhere, put it into research, put it in your neighborhood, put in the research, sponsor a kid in high school who wants to do medicine, who wants to go into arts and science. Please.
Yeah. Dr. Aluya, what you just said is so true and so unfortunate. Here in Ghana, I just saw on TV, actually yesterday, a graduating class, and it was mainly women, graduating class of medical doctors and nurses, mainly women. And I commented, I said, where are the men? There will be no husbands for them to marry. You know, that's another aspect of it that we can talk about. But research in itself, Black people have been hurt. There's distrust. So again, that is why we're dialoguing, so that we can build that trust again, so that at least we can trust each other. When my patients come to me that, you know, they bring research papers that, Dr. I was told to bring it to my primary care doctor to see if I should participate in this. I delve into it to see what is, to see if they should participate, and we're getting people now to start participating. But it takes trust. That trust, you and I and people like us have to build in our population.
I'll tell you
we
where
have to.
Trust, I'll tell you where that trust comes from.
Yes.
A lot of us who are doctors, and Black doctors too, we graduate, we just go into our cocoon. I don't understand it. I don't know if it's because of some imposter syndrome or whatever it is that places ourselves. We graduate, we just begin to fly a different kite. Every Black doctor who's graduated, you're not standing on your own pedestal. You're standing on pedestals of those who've come before you with great sacrifices. So when you go out there, don't look down on your fellow Black brothers. Don't.
Yes.
Don't. You know, you're not that much better off. And besides, we're talking about research. Open your doors to individuals who want to do research. Because if they're going to use a Black person for research, a Black person will rather have a recommendation from a Black doctor. I know they're not going to kill me. So we as Black doctors who own offices, we need to open our doors and begin to recruit people in those studies. Because otherwise, we'll continue to have a whole number of people who will be on dialysis, a whole number of people who will have failure, will fail, a whole number of those who will do all of those stuff. And that's a fact. So we, I mean, it's not about just pursuing and making money and driving a Mercedes-Benz. Jesus, that's beyond that. You know, if you do that as a doctor and you just want to run into your own world and just pursue money and all that, that's an imposter syndrome. It is, period. You know, if you don't open more doors for those coming behind you. You know, I mean, they did a research that wasn't meant for us and showed that, it was for heart failure. And when they were doing the whole thing, they found out that in that study, I think it's from the all-hearts trial or something like that, I can't remember again, but they found out that Blacks were doing so much better in that study. And the study combined of hydralazine and dinitric oxide. So when they did that, they're like, oh, how are these Black people doing so much better than everybody else? When it comes to the heart, they were very much better than that. So they now decided to say, you know what? Okay, fine. Let's do this study on these Black people alone. They did a study. We did so much better. And before you know it, they stopped this research quickly. And then guess what? The FDA approved it so quickly. And that's the Bideal that we know about today. For those who take the medication Bideal, it's hydralazine and dinitrate. But then the question is, and I asked people then, I remember I was a resident when the whole thing was coming up. It was WPQ59. That was the name of the drug. Eventually, they named it Bideal. The question is this: why were Black people doing better in those studies? Why? And I asked a lot of people didn't know that. But guess what? It took me another 15 years to find out why. So why is this? Again, if you remember when I talked about history, when those who left 30,000 years ago and moved here, over time, the genetic mutilation took place that in their lungs, for them to survive here, they produce more nitric oxide in their lungs. We came here only 500 years ago. So we've not gone through that process. So we do not have nitric oxide on our lungs. We don't produce that much. Maybe that's another reason why we're doing worse with COVID. We don't produce that much. So when you give us nitric oxide in this environment, voila, we're doing well, right? That's the explanation. But that's one thing that a lot of people didn't know about. But it took that much time for us to begin to understand. That's the reason why. They just gave us those drugs like, yeah, Black people go take. You guys will do better. But that's why we must get into research. We have to sponsor a child.
Look, maybe we should have a talk sometime on this, on research and medications on Black people, because we can start on the antihypertensives, and it's only how many years, like 3-4 years ago, that we know what is best for Black people. All this time, and high blood pressure is very common. I mean, amongst Blacks, it's a disease of Black people, is what we call it, but we've been treated with what is best for our Caucasian counterparts for so many years.
High blood pressure is not a disease of Black people. It is not. It's a narrative. And I'll tell you why. I'll give you a example, and I'll tell you why. You know why? Because when all our ancestors, everybody lived in Africa, right? What did you do? We're subsistent farmers. We went out of farm, we farmed. We went out in the field, we hunted. And we did that in broad daylight, in the tropics, with the sun, in high noon. So guess what? When you're on the farm and you're sweating, what's most likely you're going to do? You get dehydrated.
You exercising.
Right, and you get dehydrated. And when you get dehydrated, because you're losing the water. So nature created in such a way that, listen, you have to preserve that water. How do you preserve that water? By retaining salt. So when you're in Africa, you retain salt. It's natural. Yes. That's the natural thing to do. That's what nature created us as Black people in Africa to do. Now, guess what? That's the African who's retaining salt in Africa. You bring him here to the US. What do you think he's going to be still doing? Retaining salt.
It's retaining salt, and the blood pressure will go
up. Has not processed. He has not gone through that process of realizing that, look, you don't need to retain salt again. Like I said, we've been here only 500 years. The other guys, 30,000 years ago. That's a whole lot of time. So when they now looked at it, we retain salt, yes. So our pressure is much more. And we have a sedentary lifestyle and all of those. So it's not a Black man's disease.
Well, that has made it a Black man's disease. It's more common. My point is, it's only in recent times that research was focused on Black people, and they found out that we actually do better on certain drugs than others after all these years. So that's a topic that, you know, we need to deal with sometime. And we need, again, it's our job to educate our people. They're our people. Everybody on this forum is our people. And that's, I get very excited every Monday, every week. I mean, I just get excited from, you know, knowledge that is imparted on this forum. And I personally have learned a lot. Even here in Ghana, I've been teaching people about things I learned from Dr. Ashby, Dr. Bill, you know, in lifestyle changes and stuff like that. So it's awesome to just disseminate knowledge And as we do that, we'll be changing. Our communities will be stronger and will be better because, like you've said over and over again, knowledge is power. But, you know, coming back to COVID, I wanted to ask you, what would you say to the anti-vaxxers who say that they don't know enough about the vaccine to take it? They're worried about side effects, about adverse effects, because we all know that normally it takes an average of 7 years to come up with a vaccine. You've explained in detail, and we've heard it on this forum in different ways, how it came to be that we were able to get COVID vaccine as quickly as we did. I believe God ordained it. It was God's gift to us. But what would you say to them? Because they're still waiting to see the adverse effect of the vaccine and they're not getting vaccinated.
Well, I'll tell you this. There are people who are anti-vaxxers, and there are people who are recalcitrant. Irrespective of what you do, they'll not. I mean, we've had people who smoke, and you tell them cigarette causes cancer. Yeah, right. They get cancer. Some people stop smoking, or see somebody who got cancer, they stop smoking. But some people will get COPD and still continue to smoke, and they'll get cancer and they still continue to smoke. So there are people who are like that. Again, 330 million people. Yeah, some people still do what they do. But the question is this: do vaccines work? Yes, they do work. If they don't, I ask this question: when was the last time you saw polio in this country? You don't. When was the last time we eradicated smallpox across the globe? Smallpox, chickenpox, you don't see. Barely measles. Why? Because over 98% of people who are in this country are vaccinated. It began as a program way back in the 50s, and today this is where we are. So we have used vaccines to eliminate a whole lot of stuff. Now look at the Zika. Zika died a natural death. There's a story behind it. Look it up. You know, Zika with pregnant women and all that and all that. We don't hear about it anymore. So do vaccines work? Yes, they do work. But outside of this country, you still see people who have polio. I mean, Nigeria gets in and out of that list, one of 3 countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and then you have Nigeria, you know, but back and forth. And then recently they had some stories of vaccine related polio. That's another story. It does happen. People don't understand it. There's always a reason for everything. If you understand and explain that to people, they'll get it. Now, for those who don't want to take it because, oh, it was quickly made, I've explained it. And that's why I went all the way back to 1972 and brought it all the way forward and all that, so that we can understand. Now, the technology, and I say this, look, if they give you a Mercedes-Benz 2021 S-Class and a Mercedes-Benz brand new, Mercedes-Benz 1980 brand new S-Class, which one would you choose? You're going to choose the newer one. That's the technology that's done right now. Right? Because it's safer, faster, and better. Now, the issue is this. Some people don't know the mRNA technology. That same technology is a combination of a whole lot of technologies, including using PCR to decipher what the DNA is and break it and cut into half. And again, the vaccine, the old vaccine, took the entire cell, the whole cell, either killed or live. Is a whole cell that they inject into us. But these guys were so smart, they said, no, we're not going to give you the whole cell, we just give you a small piece of the stalk, of the what do you call it? The strand that comes out of it, the spike. You take that, break it up, and expand the RNA using PCR and cut the PCR into sections, modify it, preserve it, and inject it. So I tell you this, if you have a vaccine that contains the whole cell, either alive or dead, and you have a piece of it, and they inject you, which one would you choose? Of course, a lot of people would choose the one that has a thinner bed, because the chance of you injecting your whole cell with a new, genetic component is much less. So all that story, they're changing your DNA. Look, if they want to change your DNA, there are many, many other ways they're doing it. In fact, that comes to what? CRISPR, CRISPR. Look it up. That's the technology they use in creating a situation where they can take a portion of your DNA, remove it, put another section on it. That's another topic entirely. We can go into that on another day, but this one does not change your DNA. And the adverse reactions, yes, again, 300 and something, 30 million people, 7.2 billion people on Earth, you're going to have reactions here and there. Now, does that mean that it was a vaccine that they gave you today that made you get a stroke tomorrow?
Nope.
Is it possible? Like maybe,
Nope.
but most likely not.
Nope.
Because a guy who's going to have a stroke tomorrow gets a vaccine today. Oh, it's a vaccine that cost it, right? and besides, guess what? Billions of people eat eggs every day.
Yeah.
You eat an egg, you're fine. I eat the same egg, I end up in the ICU. Does that mean eggs are bad? No, it's just that it's bad for me. That's just the way it is. So, yeah, for some of the questions that were on, folic acid, not much research on folic acid about that. Folic acid is good for red blood cell, build up and whatever. But the risk of folic acid is because folic acid is one of the components that's used for building up the DNA. So if you give an individual folic acid who has a virus, you may actually be feeding the virus some DNA material, a building block. So you got to be careful with that. The same thing we do with cancer, because they need those things to build up. So no, I won't encourage that. Instead, give the zinc, the vitamin D, and the vitamin C. About traveling to Nigeria, is it safe? Yes, it is safe. Look, once you're vaccinated, you take your booster shot, you're good. Your immune system from here goes here, it goes up to here. So you're covered. Discuss with your doctor steps on how to protect yourself, social distancing, wearing your mask, washing your hands and all that, you'll be fine. And of course, if you're going to Nigeria, take your anti-malaria because you're most likely to get sick and have issues more from that than.
So, Dr. Aluya, that question might have been because I canceled my trip to Nigeria. The reason is because of the possibility of the borders being shut down again. I just didn't want to get stuck in Nigeria. March last year, when the borders were going to get shut down, I changed my flight to leave earlier, left Friday when they were going to shut down Saturday. They extended the shutdown till Monday. But guess what? People who are new, who were in Nigeria with me, who didn't leave then, they were stuck because everywhere was shut down. And they had to leave weeks later on whatever flight US planned for them to leave on, and had to pay extra. It was just cumbersome. I was glad I left. I didn't want to be caught in that again. That was the reason I decided not to take that trip this time.
Very smart.
So it wasn't because of OMICRON. Yes, I just didn't want to deal with that.
It was safe. I mean, in Europe now, they begin to talk about people sitting down, staying home and working from home. That's, Denmark and all these people, they're talking about it right now. And if they're talking about it, be rest assured, America will pick up on that as well very soon. Like, go, you all stay home, work from home.
Yeah.
So.
So there's a question there that you missed before the folic acid question. The person said, millions of unused COVID-19 vaccines are set to go to waste as demand dwindles across the developed countries, and doses likely will expire in few weeks, if not months. Correct me if I'm wrong. Effectiveness of a drug may decrease over time. So, will these near expiring COVID vaccines be good at all?
Well, and I'll say in the pidgin English, at all, better passing, not there at all. At all. Meaning, get a little is better than not having at all. Yeah.
But actually, the near expiring COVID vaccines are still very good. There's a reason why there's expiration date. Those vaccines are good till the expiration date. And you're right. After expiration, the effectiveness of the drug dwindles. Antibiotics never use after expiration. I'm not going to say too much more than that, but yes, the effectiveness,
I'll tell you
effectiveness dwindles after expiration, not before.
I've written, and I said this, that nobody is safe until all of us are safe. I've written about that from time to time. And when COVID, you see, this is where, again, the politics and everything else come into play. Why are they not creating or having vaccines being made in a place like South Africa with great surveillance system, great whatever, all the other things to do? Why are they not having that? It's the politics. Now, why are they not sharing those vaccines? And they're doing boosters here. Meanwhile, the rest of the world hasn't gotten any. Like they said, right now, they have over 3 billion vaccines that are available and all that. Now, in the developing world, when the whole thing first started, the rest of Africa, we don't have the money, we don't have the resources, we don't have a way you can stand and bargain. I mean, borrowing the word from Dr. Ariakana, who was the AU rep to the US, how do you expect a country like Togo to stand on the same platform to compete and ask for something at the same level like Denmark or Germany? It's impossible. It's impossible. So that's why Africa has to come together and pull the resources together. Now, they came up with this program called the COMVAX. The COMVAX was a vaccine program that made it possible for the COVAX, made it possible for them to distribute vaccines to less richer or developing countries so that they also would get protected. Now, as at that time, when the last president won, he pulled out. And China also pulled out. They pulled out. They're like, no, I'm not part of COVAX. I'm going to protect myself. I will protect our citizens against the politics.
No more.
Now, but over time, China came into it because they understood the dynamics and how bad it makes them look. And they started producing. And then the US, with the new president, came back in the program. But again, it's all about coming back and saying stuff and all that. But the rest of the world is not getting, especially developing countries in Africa. Only about 6% or under vaccinated. Now, how much, you ask, how much would it take to vaccinate the whole world? Anybody guess? How much would it take to vaccinate the whole world? I'll tell you, $50 billion.
In dollars?
$50 billion. $50 billion it will take to vaccinate the whole world. 50 billion. Now, how much are we using to protect ourselves from the economic woes that come out of not vaccinating everybody? About $1.3 trillion. So it doesn't make sense. 50 billion. The world could not afford to give 50 billion to protect everybody, to save lives and livelihoods. And when we're spending $3 trillion, geez. So again, you begin to wonder what the heck is going on. So we must come together. And again, I can't emphasize it. Please sponsor those who put your money into research. Sponsor a kid. You know, yes. Politics and racism have no moral sense. I totally agree. No, it's inconceivable. You don't understand that. And that's what it is. So, but because they will not save us, we have to save ourselves. You know, we have to save ourselves. So, I mean,
will gargling with warm water with salts or a vinegar solution help at all? Are there benefits to gargling to prevent COVID-19?
No, because if you see, it goes through you can go through your mouth, but you have the enzymes and whatever that can denature it and burn it and all that. But if you go through your airways, you're not gargling the one in your airways. It goes right up and it goes straight to your lungs. And in the lungs, we tend to forget we have tiny, tiny hairs. And those hairs, what they do, they trap stuff. And once they trap them, if they feel there are things that are not decent for the human body, they try to expel it. And that's why when you sneeze really fast. And I'll give you a typical example. For you and I speaking right now, when we talk and talk low, the saliva that comes out of our mouth is about 25 miles per hour. That's how it goes. Now, when we talk heavy and shout, it's about 50 to 75 miles an hour. But when we sneeze, it goes about 200, 250 miles an hour. That's why they say cover your mouth. You understand? That's why they say cover your mouth. So when somebody sneezes around you, duck because the missiles are coming, you know, and they all know that with 500 Omicrons. So you gotta be careful. So, but again, on a much rational and serious note, it doesn't. But what I have told people to do from time to time, you see, like what do you call it? The Vicks, the simple Vicks. I don't encourage those agbo and all those things that people mix and concoct. Lord have mercy. Those things are huge chemicals that can even denature your DNA. Who knows what's up with those things? And they drink those things. Look, I don't encourage those things because they mix all of those things. The people are so desperate, you understand? And they heat up and heat up and heat up. No, a simple thing like Vicks. Vicks is menthol, and you can put it into hot water, boil the hot water, takes 2 spoons, rub the Vicks on your face, your chest, your armpit, and cover up. When you cover up, the first thing it does is to make you cough. You're going to cough out. Now, why is it coughing out? Because the hot water goes in and it's going straight to your airways, and the Vicks is going in. So the Vicks is like a foam. It's menthol. It's like a foam. It goes in. It's like a wash on the airways. So, and one, it denatures the virus because it doesn't like what's there, and it's hot. It's menthol. So, and it makes you sneeze. So once you sneeze, you're going to sneeze out what's in your airways. And we know that the early studies that came out of Italy, that those who died from the respiratory problems from Italy, that we had no idea what was going on, those who had higher amount of the virus in their airways as compared to those who did not. So studies show that. They did that right from the onset, from early. So the less you have in your airway, the better for you. So if you cover up, and I give this analogy, if you have, let's say, 50 million cells in your airway, and you do the steaming, you're going to cough out. And guess what? Once you sneeze out, you're going to sneeze out maybe about 25 million. Now you're left with 25 million less. So, and then the menthol will do so much damage. Maybe another 10 million will die. So you have what? Only 20 million as compared to 50 million. So you tend to do better. If you do it a second time, you're going to fare well. And those were some of the things I did from the very early start when we had nothing to treat COVID. And I, knock on wood, I never lost any patient. I did the same thing myself when I got COVID, and I could feel my lungs get tightening up and I couldn't breathe. So those are some of the things I can do physically that help with that.
Fantastic. Interestingly, I did that too. I still do every once in a while. So, someone said, I got my booster shot today. Do I need to medicate similar to the second shot? Between this is Pfizer vaccine. I think the booster is Pfizer.
Right. When she means medicate, or he means medicate, meaning to take a tablet?
Yes, I believe maybe medicate with Tylenol. We recommend Tylenol.
Right.
But
so I'll tell you this. This is very interesting study that was done really early, I think about 15 years ago now. They did that in children when they give vaccines. So they found out that if a child comes in and takes a Tylenol before they get the shot, they tend to have less fever as compared to those who did not have the shot. Now, but the immune response, was it the same? So they initially said, oh, well, that the immediate immune response for those who took a pre-medicated with Tylenol was less in children as compared to those who did not. So what on the long run did that affect the protective coverage of the vaccine? No, it really didn't. So sometimes for those who are really scared and wondered about this, yeah, I tell them, look, take a Tylenol or Motrin 30 minutes before you go, and then maybe another 4 hours after when you go, just to help reduce the fever and the pain. That's all, and they tend to do well.
Mr. Elegbede, was your question answered? If not, can you please unmute and ask? Okay. Mr. Elegbede, was your question answered? Because I think it's, maybe medicating with, Tylenol. We recommend Tylenol and not NSAIDs. So, somebody's asking Mr. Duarte. Oh, our sister, Auntie Tawa is asking that you please come back, Dr. Aluya.
Yeah, this is my
She
second
has
time
not,
of coming.
our audience have not gotten enough of you, that
I
you
know,
have to
we
come
did
back.
the diabetes the last time.
I know. You'll be back. He'll be back. And you know what? It's always some point when we call on him, is there. Thank you so, so much. So I'm handing it over to Honorable Gustav, unless there's any other question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think Dr. Bill says VIX was pulled from usage with children. Old-time use a teaspoon. Dr. Bill, can you please pass your comment there?
You're muted.
Good. Dr. Aluya, again, thank you. Years ago, VIX was given to children in a teaspoon form because parents felt and believed that if they were to take the VIX, that would open up their chests and they would not have the cough and the condition. Unfortunately, because of the menthol, as you know, menthol opens us up and children were beginning to come down with some kind of pneumonia and or whatever. So at that point, probably in the late 50s, middle 60s, they pulled VIX from the use of children. We still have it, of course, in the marketplace, but it's no longer used in that fashion. Our old-time remedies, while they were thoughtful and came out of love and care, sometimes did not serve us well in that particular regard. So, but I, with my kids, I've used it, coming through. Of course, I didn't give them as a teaspoon to use it. Anyway, just a comment concerning the VIX entity.
Right. So, no, you don't. I mean, like you said, old-time remedies. I think it's the Bible that says, in time of ignorance, God winked. So when we had no knowledge of what's going on, I mean, we wink and God saved us. But then with science and technology, we understand things better and then, do them better. The VIX I talked about, just put in water, steam up or rub in the chest, not to eat or drink or put in the mouth, not at all. Now, I'll tell you this, something else that was put out of the market for children, aspirin, if you remember. For those who remember, they used to give aspirin a lot of kids. They used to give. But over time, and that's what science and technology and paying attention to things, we realize that, listen, when you give babies aspirin, they tend to have some adverse reaction that was detrimental and kids were dying. I think adenovirus was the reason for it. There's a cross-reactivity of the vaccine of VIX, of aspirin, with children who have adenovirus, and it causes some, acute, liver injury and shutdown. So we figured that out and say, no, for certain age, no longer give aspirin. Yeah. But do we give aspirin to adults? Yes. Now, the use of aspirin, studies are coming up to show now that is aspirin good for everybody?
No.
Really.
No.
Now, some people have GI bleed. If you have a high risk for aspirin related bleed, please stop. But with just hypertension and all that alone, the risk versus the benefits, the risk may be actually higher than the benefits. Now, you benefit from aspirin if you've had, God forbid, one prior history of stroke or heart attack. That's when you benefit from it more, not taking it ab initio. Because everybody, you see to the market, prevent strokes. Yeah, But when you've already had one, or if you've already had a problem before, not when you haven't had one. And that's what the study is showing now. And these are information we need to share with our community so that we know, because we've had a lot of people who come with GI bleed, blah, 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 and all that.
One of the things that you spoke to earlier about the 1972 paper that came out in terms of the a doctor that wrote that, the process was called attenuation. And I don't know if you remember that at all. It was when they took the piece of the antigen and they spliced it and did whatever, because prior to that, they were giving live antigen to people, and that was killing them.
Interesting discussion here on Omicron, the COVID-19 mutation. It's now time for our Medical Monday moment.
Thank you so much. Whew. Medical Monday moments. I have to share about Ghana.
Yes.
And the fact that we have a sister here in Ghana who has always, or most Mondays, been on Medical Mondays. Now that I'm in Ghana and I'm joining Medical Mondays at midnight, I appreciate it a lot more. That after you've worked all day long, you then join a program to participate from midnight to like 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m. And I just appreciate it. Also, people like Damien, Dublin, in London, people in London, it's just amazing. Guess what? I had the opportunity to meet Janet, the precious lady from Ghana, at the medical missions we had at Accra before we went to Cape Coast. She came on this Sunday, and oh my gosh, I was so excited. She is the Medical Mondays gift winner for today. I already gave her a gift, a power pack. Is the gift today. I don't know if you're familiar with power pack. You need to charge your phone. It's something that is very, very valuable to us when we, especially in Africa, so that you can keep your phone charged all the time. So she's a winner for today, and we appreciate her a lot. So I also, before we get back to Dr. Aluya, would like to ask one of my fathers here on the platform, Papa Mike Oye, Dr. Mike Oye, a world-known naturopathic doctor who educates all over the world. So please give us his insight into how to stay well during these COVID times. If you please give us a few words of advice, sir. Thank you, sir. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Thank you very much, Dr. O.
I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I know you don't mind, sir.
I want to thank the presenter, that young doctor, for a job well done. The platform is becoming hotter and hotter. The exchange of ideas is wonderful. I want to just make one comment. I think part of the immune system we have against COVID-19 or COVID-20 or COVID-21 or 22, and any COVID that may come, is also because of our eating habits in Africa. When we are going to the farm, we pluck papaya, and eat it along the way. We see tangerine somewhere, we pluck it and eat it. We see avocado in another place, we pick it and eat it. varieties of, natural things that we eat during the day, unconsciously knowing that we are building up our immune system, and all types of leaves we eat as vegetables in our soup and so on. We eat very natural things. And I will like us to encourage our people to go on in that way. Instead of going from the city and buying bread and buying Coke and buying sugar to give to our people in the villages, I think we are ruining them and bringing the diseases and the bad things from the cities back to our people. Let's become as natural as possible. And you will find that let all the COVIDs come because of the ginger, because of the turmeric, because of the black pepper, because of the alligator pepper, and so on, which is part of our diet. We build up our immune system, in wonderful ways. Please, let's continue to do that. Dr. O, there's an article I have sent to you, which I wrote at the beginning of COVID. If we can share it with people, they may be able to educate our people in the villages on how to prevent COVID naturally. Thank you very much. God bless all of you.
God bless.
Thank you. God bless you, sir. And I will share the article, sir.
Yeah.
I'll send it by email to everyone.
Good.
Thank you. Dr. Aluya.
Yes, Dr. Aluya, your closing remarks.
Oh, well, COVID is real, it's here. It's done some damage, but we can all protect ourselves against COVID. And the only way to do it is when we do it together. That's one. Two, eat right, maximum exercise. Let your heart race at least once every day. You could do a little something. If you have extra time to go to the gym, good. But a healthy heart is a dynamic heart. And let your heart do something in the bathroom, the kitchen, wherever, in the bedroom. Just do a little something. It's right. I tend to add rest well. Some people are like, yeah, right, Dr. Aluya, you don't rest well. but that's another story. But again, be informed. Be informed of what's going on, the technology that's out here to help us and to understand what's going on in our environment. Like I said, learn about it, understand it, accept it, utilize it, adopt it, and utilize it. So if you don't do that, then it's a total waste. Raise young ones who go into science, because that person you raise today will eventually save all of us together. And information is power. Get educated, get informed, and bind together. Look for people who are on the same wavelength like you, who understand your mission, who can run with you, and put all your resources together. Nothing good comes easy. Nothing. If you have an idea that you think you want to do, pursue research and all that, it's not going to be easy. None of these great people, Facebook and all that, who do the things they do today, are there because it was just easy and they gave it to them as platter of food. Even if some of them came from homes where they had some money, they had to do some legwork. And like Steve Jobs will always say, never be afraid to ask for help. Never be afraid to ask for help. We're all in this together. As professionals, doctors, we're in your community. And I give a shout out and call out to all doctors that we're all responsible to take care of our communities. Because we stand on the platform of those who have come before us, and they did that with great sacrifices. Some people lost their lives. So that those of us today can become doctors and practice here. Never take that for granted, and share your knowledge that you have and share it adequately, sometimes with effort, because not everybody will accept you the very first time. Be ready to repeat yourself. You will. I mean, even preachers in the Bible, you don't, when you say this thing, they won't hear the first time, because you never know where somebody's mind is. be noble and gentle and kind enough to understand that nobody gets it the first time around. You always go back and reiterate yourself and put the word again. If you want to achieve a name, then you have to. So again, we're all in this together. If you're in doubt, reach out to your doctor and ask, because when you have an electrical problem, you don't go onto Google and go on Google how to fix electrical stuff. You look for an electrician. If you have a mechanical problem, why people go to Google and look for medical issues, that's another thing. It will further confuse you, and then anxiety and confusion comes in. You have your doctors. So at the end, and I'll close this, we as Black people, we have a unique and peculiar DNA, and we need to understand that. If there's anything, please get a primary care physician. You have to have one. Somebody who you can talk. Your medical confidant. I mean, I have an accountant. I have this. You don't have a doctor who's going to secure your money, secure your life and everything else. We saw what COVID did to the rest of the world. The world was sick. Everybody was shut down. So you have to have a medical confidant who, when you have issues, you sit with, you talk with. Understand they're busy, but at the same time, don't be in a hurry. Try to reach out to them when it's most conceivable, not at 2 o'clock in the morning, or 5 o'clock in the morning, demand to be seen. But majority of us are here to help and reach out and be of help. So, and everybody here to know that you have to know what your A1C is. Know your diabetes status. Know your diabetes status. Know what your A1C is, because diabetes, I call the pandemic before the pandemic. It's been ravishing the world. It is. 66% of people I see on the daily practice have diabetes or pre-diabetes. So please know your HIV, your diabetes status, know your A1C. And if you're pre-diabetic, you take steps to prevent that. Because diabetes comes with a gamut. It's like the legion of demons. It comes with a whole lot of demons of disease. So I'll close by that, and I say, God bless, and thank you all for giving me the opportunity to do this.
Immense gratitude, Dr. Nelson Aluya, and thank you to our medical experts and our participants for choosing to make health and wellness a priority. Please share the Medical Monday links and invite your friends and family. Next time we meet, also, you can subscribe to the Medical Monday channel on YouTube, and please be sure to hit the notification bell on the page. You'll be notified for future shows and can join us with a click of a button. But importantly, remember our mantra: strong health, strong future. We look forward to seeing you again, same time next week, when we will delve into another important topic concerning our health. Till then, God bless you all. We love you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much. Please unmute and clap for Dr.
Good night.
Aluya.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.